Widowed alien governor chose a human slave to impregnate her 5 daughters until. At the heart of the capital stood the governor's palace, a monumental structure of white crystal and silver metal, stretching toward the sky like the fingers of some giant alien hand. Governor Laurana Veli stood in the main observation hall, her blue-scaled fingers drumming on the crystal railing. She was alone now, widowed after her mate, Governor Rithon, died in the last interstellar war. Her 5 daughters, Tyria, Zella, Kira, Mela, and Vanya, were all strong, talented, and headstrong in ways that made her job almost impossible. Each had inherited a part of their father's brilliance, and each had a streak of rebellion that tested her patience. Her advisors had warned her repeatedly, "Your daughters will not listen. They will bring chaos to the palace and the city." Laurana had tried every solution, tutors, discipline, even arranging alliances with other planetary families. Nothing worked. And now, with the city council pressing her to stabilize the region after the war, she had no choice but to try something completely different. "Summon him," she said quietly to her aide. The aide nodded. "The human has arrived, Governor." Laurana turned and watched through the energy shield as a small shuttle descended into the landing bay. Humans were rare on Zyphera and most were confined to trade and engineering roles. But this human, Jonas Calver, was different. He was recommended by the Terran Interstellar Corps for his resourcefulness, his courage, and most importantly, his ability to handle situations no one else could. The shuttle doors hissed open, and Jonas stepped out. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders, short brown hair, and eyes that seemed too curious for his own good. He carried only a small bag and a confident, easy gait, as though the palace and its alien majesty were merely another challenge to be solved. Laurana's blue eyes narrowed. Humans fascinated her. They were fragile, but their minds moved in strange, unpredictable ways. Sometimes that unpredictability was dangerous. Sometimes it was powerful. "Human," she said, her voice echoing in the hall. "I am Laurana Velis, governor of Zyphera. You are Jonas Calver." Jonas bowed slightly, a gesture he had clearly studied for alien etiquette. "Yes, Governor Velis. I've been sent to help with your daughters and any problems that come with them." Laurana raised an eyebrow. "Bold." "I like that. You will follow me. Watch carefully. These 5 girls are not ordinary." The first meeting with the daughters did not go smoothly. Each daughter had a distinct personality that seemed designed to clash with the others. Tyria, the eldest, had inherited her father's strategic mind and a sharp tongue. She sized Jonas up instantly, her violet eyes suspicious. "You are the human?" she asked, voice sharp. "Do you even know what you're stepping into?" Jonas smiled faintly. "I know enough to try." Zella, the second eldest, was quiet but observant. She did not speak much, but her eyes followed every movement. Kira was fiery, her scales a bright teal. She crossed her arms and stared at Jonas like he was a bug she might crush at any moment. Mela was restless, pacing back and forth, while Vanya, the youngest, hid behind her sisters but peeked at Jonas with a mix of curiosity and hope. Laurana cleared her throat. "They will test you," she warned. "They do not trust humans easily. But they will respect you if you prove yourself." Jonas nodded. "I understand, but respect has to be earned, not demanded." Tyria snorted. "We'll see about that." The humans' first challenge came almost immediately. That evening, the palace's energy core, responsible for powering the entire city sector, began to flicker. Alarms blared as advisors rushed to the control room. "Human," Laurana called, "you are with us. Can you stabilize it?" Jonas followed the technicians to the core, his eyes scanning the complex alien machinery. Humans had technology, yes, but Zyphera's devices were different, alive almost, responding to touch, voice, and thought patterns. Most humans would panic. Jonas didn't. He observed the readings carefully, adjusting dials, redirecting flows, and listening to the hum of the energy. "You're doing it wrong," Kira shouted from the observation deck, her voice both incredulous and challenging. Jonas glanced up. Maybe, or maybe differently. Watch. Using a combination of human improvisation and careful observation, he rerouted energy flows in a way no Xiferan engineer had considered. Lights stopped flickering. Alarms went silent. The daughters stared. Kira's mouth dropped slightly. Tyria's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in calculation. Zella's quiet approval was almost imperceptible. Mela stopped pacing, stunned. Even Vanya smiled shyly. Laurana finally exhaled. "Perhaps you are more capable than I expected." Jonas shrugged. "Humans adapt. That's our strength." The next few days tested Jonas in ways he had never imagined. He navigated palace politics, taught the daughters teamwork, and even faced a local gang of smugglers trying to steal the city's energy crystals. Each challenge was met with ingenuity, courage, and most importantly, a calm that earned him small but noticeable respect. The daughters, initially resistant, began to change. Tyria asked questions about his strategy. Zella observed quietly and mimicked his calculations. Kira, still fiery, began to challenge him in debates rather than insults. Mela, once restless, started to assist in experiments. Vanya, who had been shy, began to smile openly. Jonas noticed the change and said quietly to himself, "These girls, they're remarkable. They just needed someone who believed in them." But the palace was not without danger. One night, a shadow moved through the corridors, an intruder. Jonas and Vanya, who had stayed late to study alien navigation patterns, caught sight of a cloaked figure near the governor's chambers. "Human," Vanya whispered. Jonas nodded, signaling her to stay behind. He moved silently, using every skill he had learned in his human survival courses. When the intruder tried to open the governor's safe, Jonas leaped forward and grabbed the figure. The mask came off to reveal a rival alien noble from another sector, someone who wanted Laurana's political power weakened. "You cannot interfere," the noble spat. Jonas tightened his grip. "I already have." He brought the intruder before Laurana the next morning. The daughters watched in amazement as their father's widow handled the situation with a mix of authority and calm, and the human had played a key role. As part one drew to a close, Laurana stood on the palace balcony with Jonas and her daughters. The city lights glimmered below like a sea of stars, and the wind carried the scent of alien flora. "You have done well, human," Laurana said, "but this is only the beginning. My daughters still have much to learn, and our enemies are many. Can you handle that?" Jonas looked at the 5 daughters. Each one was a challenge, a puzzle, and a potential ally. "I don't just handle it," he said, smiling. "I solve it." The daughters exchanged looks, some skeptical, some curious, some secretly impressed. And as the wind howled around the palace towers, a distant rumble of engines suggested that the next challenge had already begun. Because in a galaxy where humans were rare and underestimated, Jonas Calver was about to show Xiphera exactly why humans should never be ignored. The morning sun glinted off Xiphera's crystal towers, making the city shimmer like a jewel. But the palace of Governor Laurana Veles felt less like a home and more like a fortress under siege. Despite Jonas Calver's recent successes, trouble was brewing. The daughters gathered in the council chamber, each carrying a different expression. Tyria, the eldest, tapped her fingers on the table with impatience. "We cannot ignore this," she said, her sharp voice echoing. "The rival noble who tried to steal the governor's safe will return, and he will bring more than a single intruder next time." Jonas leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Then we prepare, and we make sure he fails again." Zella, standing quietly nearby, spoke softly, "But they will not attack alone. The noble has allies in other sectors. He will have ships, soldiers, maybe even assassins trained in the old war." Jonas nodded. "Then we need to think like humans. Humans never fight the same way twice. We improvise." Kira let out a small laugh, surprisingly impressed. You actually have a plan. I thought humans just winged it, Jonas grinned. Sometimes we do, but a plan is only the starting point. Adaptation wins wars. That afternoon, Lorana summoned Jonas to the balcony overlooking the city. You understand the stakes now, she said. This is not just about my daughter's safety anymore. The noble wants my territory, my influence, and he will stop at nothing. Jonas studied the city below. Smugglers, traders, and ordinary citizens moved through the streets, unaware of the danger approaching. We can't protect everyone, he said, but we can protect the palace. And the daughters, that will be enough for now. Lorana's scaled fingers twitched in thought. I trust you, human, but you must also teach my daughters. If they are to survive in this galaxy, they must be clever, strong, and adaptable. Jonas smiled faintly. They'll learn, and quickly. Over the next days, Jonas focused on teaching the daughters human methods of problem-solving. It was not easy. Tyria wanted every decision backed by logic, data, and calculation. She struggled with improvisation, insisting on strict plans. Zella observed quietly, her sharp mind picking up patterns in Jonah's methods. She excelled at anticipation and prediction, quietly surprising everyone. Kira resisted at first, often mocking Jonah's suggestions. But when he demonstrated a clever tactic to evade a simulated attack on the palace's energy shields, she began to pay attention. Mela, who had always been restless, finally found purpose in hands-on tasks, reconfiguring drones, adjusting machinery, and testing defenses. Vanya, the youngest, surprised everyone the most. She absorbed Jonah's lessons like a sponge and began offering her own ideas, sometimes brilliant, sometimes reckless, but always showing courage. By the end of the week, the daughters had started to see the truth. Humans did not simply overpower enemies with strength. Humans outsmarted them. Humans adapted when everything went wrong. Late one evening, a warning alarm echoed through the palace. Jonas, the daughters, and Lorana rushed to the command center. Sensors had detected multiple ships entering Zyphera's sector, fast, sleek, and heavily armed. The rival noble, Tyria said grimly. He comes for us. Jonas scanned the sensor data. They're not here to negotiate. They want the palace, and they want it quickly. Lorana's blue eyes flicked over each daughter. This is your test. Will you run, or will you stand? The daughters exchanged determined looks. Tyria nodded. We stand. Jonas smiled faintly. Good, then let's make them regret it. Jonas organized the palace defenses, blending human ingenuity with Zypheran technology. Energy shields were adjusted, traps were set, and defensive drones were reprogrammed to act unpredictably. Where a Zypheran might rely on sheer force, Jonas relied on deception, timing, and surprise. The first wave of enemy ships arrived just after nightfall. Lasers tore through the sky, and the palace shields shimmered under impact. Jonas coordinated the defenses with calm efficiency, issuing orders to the daughters. Tyria, monitor the sensors, anticipate their moves. Timing is everything. Jonas noticed that the rival noble underestimated Zyphera's defenders. The enemy ships were fast, but their attacks were predictable. Using human tactics, Jonas directed a series of decoys and feints, drawing the enemy into traps. Drones swooped from hidden towers, energy nets immobilized advancing ships, and shield pulses reflected some of the energy beams back at the attackers. Hours passed. The battle raged in the sky above the palace. The daughters had never worked so well together. Jonas guided them, praised them, and subtly taught them to trust each other and their own instincts. Tyria finally smiled. I never thought humans could teach strategy like this. Jonas smirked. We don't just fight, we think. The rival noble's fleet began to falter. One by one, ships were disabled, forced to retreat or captured. Zyphera had survived its first real test with Jonah's guidance. After the battle, the palace was quiet. Drones hovered silently, and the city below looked peaceful as if nothing had happened. But Jonas knew better. This was only the beginning, he said. The noble won't give up, he's testing us, and someone inside the city may have helped him. Laurana nodded gravely. I suspected as much. There are spies among us, perhaps even in my council. Jonas frowned. Then we need to find them before they strike again. The daughters agreed to help. For the first time, they were not just students, they were allies in the defense of their city. Together, they began reviewing council records, surveillance footage, and energy readings to find inconsistencies, patterns, and signs of betrayal. Late at night, Vanya approached Jonas in the palace garden. Human, I want to do more. I want to help find the traitor. Jonas smiled at her determination. Then you will, but be careful. Spies are clever and some are dangerous. Vanya nodded. I'm ready. Jonas looked at the stars. Humans thrived on challenges like this, impossible odds, hidden threats, and high stakes. And now, these daughters were learning to think like humans too. A week later, the breakthrough came. Zella noticed unusual patterns in energy usage, small, repeated surges at odd hours. She traced them to one of the palace's outer towers. Inside, they found a secret communications hub, transmitting messages to the rival nobles' forces. Tyria's sharp voice rang out. A spy! Someone within the palace is betraying us. Jonas examined the data. And whoever it is, they're careful. But humans and careful observation always catch the small mistakes. Mela pointed to a series of messages. Look here, repeated timing errors. The transmissions are slightly off. Whoever is sending them isn't trained in secrecy. Kira's eyes narrowed. Which means it's someone we know. The daughters shared tense looks. Laurana entered the room, her expression unreadable. Do you have proof? Jonas stepped forward. We have enough to narrow it down, but we must act carefully. If the spy realizes we know, they may escape, or worse, strike first. The next day, the spy made their move. During a palace inspection, alarms blared as a hidden bomb threatened the energy core. Jonas and the daughters raced to the chamber, working together to disarm the device. Tyria calculated precise timings. Zella guided the placement of countermeasures. Kira diverted energy flows. Mela controlled the drones and Vanya tracked the spies' movements. Jonas reached the bomb just in time, cutting the final circuit with a human-engineered tool. The device clicked harmlessly. The daughters looked at him in awe. We did it, Vanya whispered. Jonas shook his head. No, you did it. I only showed you how. But before they could celebrate, the spy appeared, revealing themselves. A trusted advisor from Laurana's council, a figure who had always seemed loyal. You think you've won, the advisor sneered. But the noble's true fleet arrives tomorrow. Zyphera will fall. Laurana's eyes blazed with anger. Then we will make sure he does not. Jonas clenched his fists. And we will prove why humans survive where others fail. The daughters, standing behind him, shared determined nods. They had learned, they had adapted, and they were ready to fight, not just for themselves, but for their city, their mother, and the human who had changed their lives. The shadow over Zyphera had grown larger. The enemy's ultimate strike was coming, and the palace, and the daughters, would need every ounce of courage and ingenuity to survive. As night fell over the crystal towers, Jonas Calver looked at the stars and whispered, They think they understand humans. They have no idea. The sky over Zyphera burned with the light of 1,000 engines. The rival noble's fleet had arrived, sleek warships cutting through the atmosphere with deadly precision. Energy beams streaked across the horizon, striking the city's outer defenses. The palace trembled under the first volleys. Inside the command center, Jonas Calver stood with the 5 daughters and Governor Laurana Veles. The room buzzed with tension. Every display showed the enemy's overwhelming numbers. We are outnumbered, Laurana said, her voice steady but tense. We cannot win by force alone, Jonas nodded. Exactly. Humans don't always win by fighting harder. We win by fighting smarter. And today we will show them what humans can do. Tyria, standing tall, drew a sharp breath. Then we fight together. No more standing back. We do this as a team. Zella leaned forward, pointing at the enemy fleet's formation. They are predictable. Their formation leaves a blind spot over the southern ridge. We can use it. Kira's teal scales shimmered under the command lights. I'll control the shield generators. Timing is everything. Mela grinned, fingers flying over the drone controls. And I'll make sure they never see us coming. Vanya, wide-eyed but determined, nodded. I'll track their movements. We can't miss a single detail. Lorana looked at Jonas. Do you trust them to follow your strategy? Jonas smiled faintly. I don't just trust them. They already proved themselves. Now we finish this. The first wave of the nobles' fleet moved toward the palace. Jonas implemented a plan humans called a feint and trap. Smaller ships, guided by drones and energy decoys, lured the enemy into a narrow canyon. Energy nets triggered at precise moments, immobilizing the lead ships. Shield pulses deflected beams, and surprise drone strikes disabled engines. The daughters executed every command perfectly. Tyria monitored sensors, issuing rapid adjustments. Zella anticipated enemy maneuvers and rerouted drones. Kira timed the shield's pulses to perfection. Mela used the palace's hidden tech to create illusions of additional defenses. Vanya spotted weak points in the enemy fleet and reported them instantly. Even Lorana had to admit silently. The human had taught her daughters not just to follow orders, but to think. The rival noble, watching from his flagship, snarled, "This is impossible. Humans are supposed to be weak. How is one human controlling them like this?" Jonas grinned as he watched the enemy fleet falter. "Weak," he muttered to himself. "They just underestimate us." That's always the first mistake. By mid-battle, the palace's energy core, the heart of the city's defense, was under attack. Massive ships fired concentrated beams, aiming to destroy the shields. Jonas realized brute defense would fail. He turned to the daughters. "We need a diversion. Mela, Kira, Vanya, create a phantom shield signature. Make it look like the core is unprotected." The daughters executed it flawlessly. Drones generated false energy pulses and holographic shields, fooling the enemy sensors. The nobles' ships altered course, firing at the phantom instead of the real core. Tyria and Zella directed the palace defenses to strike from unexpected angles, targeting engines and weapon systems. The enemy began to panic. Ships collided, overcompensated, or fell into canyon traps. Jonas didn't just fight the battle. He predicted the nobles' next moves, improvising like a chess player thinking 10 steps ahead. Using Zyphera's energy grid, he created temporary power bursts that amplified shield strength in critical moments, then rerouted excess energy to disable enemy targeting systems. The daughters worked in perfect synchronization. Every decision, every adjustment, every countermeasure showcased the lessons they had learned from the human. Kira finally laughed, a sharp, triumphant sound. "I can't believe it's working," Vanya added. "We're actually winning." Mela, always restless, smiled wide. "And I didn't even break a single drone today." Tyria, focused as ever, said quietly, "Humans are clever." Jonas looked at them and nodded. "You've all become clever too." The battle raged into the night. Zyphera's outer towers held, the palace remained intact, and the nobles' fleet was being decimated by traps, decoys, and unexpected counterattacks. Jonas even sent a small strike team to disable the enemy flagship. The daughters watched in amazement as human ingenuity turned the tide of war. At the climax, the noble himself attempted to board the palace with a small elite squad. Jonas and the daughters were ready. Using stealth, timing, and clever redirection, they intercepted the intruders in the main hall. Tyria and Zella coordinated movement. Kira used energy barriers to block escape routes. Mela and Vanya controlled drones to disarm enemies. Jonas confronted the noble personally, disarming him in a swift but non-lethal maneuver. "You lose," Jonah said simply, human calm in the chaos. The noble scowled, but he was defeated. His ships either destroyed or disabled, his plan ruined. He had no choice but to retreat. Scifi was safe. As dawn broke over the city, the daughters stood with Jonas on the balcony once more. The crystal towers glimmered, untouched by the battle's chaos. Citizens emerged from hiding, cheering for their survival, though few understood the human who had guided them. Laurana approached, placing a hand on Jonah's shoulder. "You have done more than I ever expected. Not only did you protect my daughters, but you taught them how to survive, how to think, how to lead. You have saved Scifi." Jonas shrugged, modest. "I just showed them what humans do best. They did everything else." Tyria stepped forward. "We underestimated humans before, not anymore. Today, one human changed everything, and taught 5 Zypheran daughters something we couldn't have learned otherwise." Zella nodded, eyes bright. "Humans adapt. Humans think differently, and they win when others fail." Kira crossed her arms, smirking. "I might actually like humans now, especially this one." Mela grinned, hugging a drone. "This human makes everything fun, and we all survived." Vanya, the youngest, smiled shyly. I think we can do anything now because we learned from him." Jonas smiled at them, a rare moment of quiet pride. "Exactly. Humans survive because we never give up and we never stop learning. And now, so do you." Governor Laurana Veles looked out over her city, proud of her daughters and amazed by the human who had changed everything. For the first time since her mate's death, she felt a renewed hope. Scifi was safe, her daughters were stronger, and one human had reminded the galaxy that humans were not weak. Above the city, the enemy ships fled, leaving a sky scarred by battle. But the scars of war were also a reminder. Humans were unpredictable, unstoppable when needed, and capable of inspiring even the most talented aliens. Jonas stood with the daughters, watching the sunrise. For humans, this was nothing extraordinary, just another challenge. But for Scifi, this human had become legend. "Will they come back?" Vanya asked quietly. Jonas shook his head. "Maybe, but next time they'll face something even stronger, because you 5 learned to think like humans, and humans never back down." The daughters smiled, knowing he was right. They had survived the greatest threat Scifi had faced, and they had done it together, with human guidance, ingenuity, and courage. For the first time in generations, the city below was safe. The governor's daughters were stronger, wiser, and ready to face the galaxy themselves. And Jonas Calver, the human who had entered their lives as a stranger, had proven why humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had underestimated humans once again, and it would pay the price if it ever did so again.